Hello and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. I'm Chris Salzman.
And I'm Andy Rao.
This week, I think we're going to kind of do what we did a little bit of last week, which ended up being pretty fun, was making a D6 table sort of on the fly. And you told me beforehand that you had an idea for one, although you have not told me what that idea is yet.
I do, yeah. So as you know, because you'll be playing in it, I am prepping to run an online game of the Alien role-playing game. And that's coming up in just a couple of days. By the time this episode airs, it will have come and gone. So the table idea I have is kind of themed by aliens, although it's not a table I will be using in the game you're playing in, so we don't need to worry about spoilers here. When you think about running a game of Alien or some other kind of sci-fi horror type game like Mothership or something else, it's fun to think about the kinds of challenges PCs run into and must solve in movies and video games in the space horror genre. And one of the biggies is, especially in like video game incarnations of this genre, is you've always got to go fix something, but something always goes really wrong that like you then have to go fix another thing. So here's our table. I'd like us to make a D6 table of why is this critical shipboard system going to be so hard to repair?
Okay. I love it.
Okay.
Okay. So my first thought immediately was just like it's on the outside of the ship, so you have to do an untethered spacewalk.
Perfect. Yes. Okay. Do you mind jotting these down while we?
Yeah, I'll jot this one down. So
okay, and then
untethered spacewalk.
Yeah. So you could. Yeah, that's the classic. Someone's gonna have to go out there, right? And yeah, and when you've got,
it's always gonna be the most nervous guy is gonna have to go out there.
Totally. You're in one of those big bulky suits, so you can't move, and that's when we realize that whatever the things are, they can definitely move around on the whole of the ship.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when we realize that whoever built this stupid space station put like the critical communications array way out on big antennas, like way out that you have to walk on. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it takes like a non-standard screwdriver head as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that goes pinging off into nothingness.
Okay, so number one is you're gonna have to go outside to fix it. Mm-hmm. So I have an idea for number two.
Okay.
This system is going to be hard to fix because the only person who is able to fix it, or who has like the passcode to get you into the room or the system, is an enemy or a person with a competing agenda who's demanding a devil's bargain in exchange for their help.
I mean, the clear answer there is right. Like they're demanding a devil's bargain, so you will then hold them at gunpoint, or kill them to take the key card, the red key card that you need. This
table is. This table is mostly jokey, but
yeah.
I am trying to think, what are some things that, like in a game of this sort, there's really no telling like what the PCs might try to do, right? If you're in like a wrecked space station and the power is off and stuff, you kind of gotta rely on your players to come up with like a creative way to do it. Because there's so many different, they could go try to repair the life support, they could go try and repair the communication system to call in help. They could, there's an endless variety of things they can do. And so I think if you're GMing, you need to be ready, whatever they propose, you need to be ready to like just throw a complication into their plan that will itself involve like tough choices and stuff. Right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I think both of the two we have so far are. So what's another one, Chris? You got one?
I'm thinking about, so I'm like always thinking about Jurassic Park, but thinking about Jurassic Park in particular right now, about how when they hit the point in the story where they essentially just have to reboot everything on the island, and in between them and the power station is a bunch of raptors. So like the control room or whatever is, the way to it is blocked by your like clear and present alien danger.
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah. Have you ever played the video game Dead Space?
I have not.
Okay, it's like kind of an Aliens. It's a great game, but it's an Aliens type of ripoff game. And there's a wonderful moment where you're traveling in the this haunted, infested space station, of course, and you're traveling through like the tram on the space station,
Yeah.
and you say something like, "Well, I've got to get to the control room or whatever, but at least I don't have to go through the medical like lab." And then
Yes.
right on cue, like the train screeches to a halt, and this voice goes like, "Error! Like we are now arriving at the medical lab," and it's
Oh, that's
like,
perfect.
of course we are,
Yeah.
and it's full of zombies as you would expect. But
Of course, right? Yeah.
so, AI, like hostile artificial intelligences, I guess, have to.
Ooh.
There has to be at least one on any ship or system that's failing. So, what about what if the artificial intelligence thinks that your repair attempt is a threat or an attack? So you have to like talk it down or evade all of the defense systems that it's bringing online, or something.
Yes. Yeah. So it just thinks you're a threat. Yeah. Of course, obviously, like, yeah, what 2001 Space Odyssey is a pretty good.
Yes.
Pretty
Yes,
good.
that's a classic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could be as simple as like you don't have the right tool to fix the control thing. Like, right, like, yeah, there's a bunch of wires out and you have to go find some wires somewhere else.
Yeah, sometimes simple can be good, right?
Yeah, like let's upgrade that to like lacking a crucial tool.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That could force the player to come up with a more direct, a more crude or an alternate way to solve it, or it could lead to like, oh yeah, the tool you need is like down in Cargo Bay 13 and no one's heard from Cargo Bay 13 in a week, right?
So there's 5, and it's like, so we have like, I'm just go through them real quick. So there's like the untethered spacewalk, right? So this is like somewhere outside of the ship. There is some sort of like enemy or other faction that has control over what you're trying to access.
Okay.
The control room is just on the opposite end of a bunch of alien enemies. Some sort of hostile AI thinks that you are a threat. You are lacking a crucial tool in order to operate this machinery, or fix this control panel.
So I'm not proposing this necessarily as our sixth and final one, but what about something like just something new appears on the scene that like forces a shift of priorities or a quick decision? So what if like an unidentified boarding vessel just like docked with the ship?
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of video games again, because video games do this sort of thing well. And there was, I think it might have been in another Dead Space game where like late in the game you're like fighting the bad guys or whatever, and this like pod of helpful Marines like docks with the ship, right, all of a sudden. And it turns out that I think they're trying to just get rid of all the evidence or something. You end up fighting them,
Of
anyway,
course,
but
right.
of course you do. But, so I don't know, another ship appears or docks with you. It could be maybe it could be help, it could be pirates or somebody trying to take advantage, could be like somebody that knows nothing about what's going on, and
just like the presence of either like a new ship or new NPCs showing up is really good. I'm wondering though, like so like if you want to keep a little bit more on theme, like how is that relating back to the like a control panel?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so like a lot of these are like negative. I mean, what if we did like a positive one? Like
sure.
you end up stumbling upon a ship that has access to the thing that you need.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that works.
It's like a ship full of helpful technology appears.
Okay, yeah, it's good to have one slightly positive.
Just so you can look at it and be like, oh, that'd be really great if I rolled that, and then you never roll it.
Of course, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we have do we have 6 now?
Yes, we do have 6.
All right, so why don't you read them back to us real quick?
Okay, so there's Untethered Spacewalk. A rival faction has access to the thing that you need. The control room is on the opposite end of a bunch of enemies. Hostile AI thinks you're a threat. You are lacking a crucial tool, or a ship full of helpful technology appears.
Okay. I think I like it.
Yeah. Again, that's like a good just outline for a fun adventure.
Yeah, I think a table like that, it's not, you probably wouldn't use a table like that, like on the fly in an adventure. I mean, you certainly could, but maybe more of like a brainstorming in advance, like just to give you some ideas for what's going on.
I guess tell me a little bit more about the Alien game that you're running. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm playing in it. So you sent us a list of characters that we could choose from, which got me really excited and hyped for the
Good.
actual session. But yeah, so did you come up with those, or like I guess are you running a pre-published adventure for this, or is this your own creation?
So I am running a pre-published adventure for this. It's called really melodramatically called Destroyer of Worlds. So
Okay.
so but I'm sure everything will go according to plan though, and your characters don't need to worry. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But what I've found, and I've been doing a lot of prep for this, and I've been thinking like, oh, what can I kind of bring to the podcast here to share about my experiences in prep? Because it's not exactly a sandbox, but it's a really open-ended scenario. And one of the reasons it's like simultaneously it makes it easier to plan and more terrifying to plan for, right? Because there's not as much, I don't have to like memorize a big bunch of scripted stuff that you're going to experience, but I also have to trust that you guys are going to keep rolling forward and keep things moving, and I have to be ready to like throw stuff at you if you stall out or you're wasting time, that sort of thing. So I wish I had more takeaways, but anyway, I'm sorry I've kind of gone away from your question, but I'm using a published adventure. But what I found really quickly is that I was going to have to like really rework this. So I'm taking a lot of the pieces that like the stuff I consider like the harder work, like the statting up of stuff and the mapping of locations, and I've taken like all those puzzle pieces, but I'm rearranging them a little bit to change the story around. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think the group that you have put together, I know at least a couple of them.
Yeah,
I think it'll go great. Yeah, I'm sure we will somewhat stick to your plan, but also make it a lot harder on you. Than right,
yeah.
as most good players do. Is this the sort of game where you could play like a 2-year long campaign in it, or is it really designed for like a tight couple hour one shot here and there?
Yeah, so this is one of the selling points of the Alien RPG. So let me put on my like marketer hat here. Yeah, so one of the pitches that it talks about in any article you read about this game is the 2 modes you can play it in. One is the campaign mode, which is what you just described, like a typical RPG thing. It's like an ongoing thing. You might play it for a few months or a few years, but you have characters and they go around exploring the universe and getting into adventures, right? And I think that kind of mode, like what you would be doing is sort of like scoundrels of the setting, like a little bit of like the Han Solo-y type of thing, like roving
like scrappers or
something
like
roving vagabonds of some sort. But then the other quote mode you can play in this game, they call it cinematic mode. I mean, I think if you're an experienced GM, you would just say, "Oh, it's just like you mean a one shot, right?"
Yeah.
So, and that is like and I feel silly almost using the official terminology for it, but in that mode, it is basically a one shot or something that is designed to be played in like a couple short sessions. That's what we will be doing, and the goal of that, which is a very wise game design decision on their part, given the subject matter, I think the goal is to like try to reproduce the pacing and experience of an Alien movie. You know, it means a lot of stuff happening kind of quickly and in very intense fashion, and like kind of it's a one shot, so your character is very possibly will die. And you know, like any good one shot or like a con game, it invites you to like have characters that have agendas and strong personalities that would not really work in a long-term campaign. So in this, like, you could have a character who is like whatever, a psychopath, because that would, you know, because that would make an interesting cinematic experience, whereas you could not have like a psychopath in your 2-year regular campaign without it falling apart.
Yeah, it's like that you can play that one-dimensional character because there doesn't need to be any more depth to the Marine that just wants to shoot stuff if he's only going to be around for an hour. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, we'll be playing in that mode, and I guess we'll just see how it goes. But
yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned like this cinematic mode and like it being a selling point, because I was talking with John Corey, a past guest and co-host and stuff of the show. So he played in the one shot that I just did, and he was mentioning how he's just like, he likes shorter game sessions these days.
Yeah.
Like I'm finding myself gravitating towards that a lot too. Playing these games that they're not meant to be a year long, and there isn't the depth there either for it. It really is just like a one night, couple night thing. And then you move on with your life. Yeah. And you can, you don't have to come up with a character that you're just really going to invest in. It's just like you can just go with your first idea, have fun with it, and then set it aside. Think about it fondly.
It's interesting. I totally agree. And I mean, I think a lot of people in kind of our point in life probably would gravitate towards that. And so it doesn't surprise me that's a selling point here. I think what the Alien game line wants is they really want you to be able to like buy an adventure or whatever and like play that night with your friends, right? And it's got all the character sheets and stuff like that printed out for you. In reality, like it still takes prep. I mean, it's never going to be that easy. But I often wonder about that, and not to drift off into kind of a just in RPG industry discussion, but I often wonder when I see like Dungeons and Dragons releasing these like big monster campaign books, which are awesome, and I love them, and I've played a bunch of them. But I wonder how many D&D groups actually play all the way through, like whatever Tyranny of Dragons or what. I do think that games like more on the fringe of the hobby have a little bit more freedom to be like to experiment with, like, hey, maybe you just want like a game to play over this holiday weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what Tales from the Yawning Portal was probably a little bit of an attempt to do that, right? Like more kind of single things. But I guess I haven't read it fully. I don't know if the intent was that you're going to play through all these adventures, or not. But I mean, like, it's a time-honored tradition in D&D to just play, roll up some specific characters and play a one-shot and then never really sort of touch them again. And I think it's a style of play that actually appeals to a lot more people. Like, there's, at least in my experience, I found like long campaigns are great. You have to find the exact right people to do that. Whereas putting together a one shot, getting a couple of friends together, that's actually pretty easy and low impact if you're telling them up front, like, no, you're not committing for years. Like, you're committing for 1 or 2 nights. And then too, like what I mentioned, like, I mean, there's something really fulfilling about that, knowing that it's going to end pretty quickly. Like, because then I think you're more willing to take some chances that you might not if it's going to be, a long 2-year campaign.
Absolutely. I think one area of this, I mean, obviously one-shots and miniature campaigns have been around for forever. But one area that I think the Alien RPG kind of is aiming for that I like is this idea of like, how can we compress the entire experience? How can we let you experience the entirety of this game in like a short period of time, right? Because everyone has played one-shot D&D adventures where you're first level adventurers and you have a first level adventure and then that's it. But like in the Alien game, it's trying to go from the starting point and do your character growth and grow as a character, resolve a big plot and stuff like that. You're trying to compress all of that into like the time that it would take to do that in a movie, right? Yeah. So like, could that be done with D&D? You can play in short chunks, but you will not experience more than a fraction of really what the game has to offer you, right? Yeah. At least from a certain perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of how the game is. I mean, if you wanted to say like level up your character 10 times, that would be your night. Like, is figuring out how to level up your character 10 times. So I guess I'm curious with the Alien game, like if you've read the books a little bit, if you play in the non-cinematic mode, whatever they call it, the normal mode, do you, I guess, like, do you have that exact same sense of progression just like stretched out, or is it like the feeling of the cinematic mode just over and over and over?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, the rulebook doesn't talk about it too much, and I think I get this very strong sense from reading this rulebook. It's like, you totally can play this in campaign mode, have fun. You'll have to figure out the answers to some kind of tough questions, like, how are you going to make this fun? But we're sure you'll do great. But,
yeah, it's like the less you know about the xenomorphs, like, history, the better.
Yes. Yeah.
So speaking of which, does the alien do they call the game master something ridiculous like the xenomorph master?
They do. It's
Okay.
wait, you want to take a guess? Have you seen a couple
Yeah,
of
wait.
alien movies,
Let me
right?
see if I can take a better guess than that. I feel like it'd be something with like Marines, like the like drill sergeant-ish, like drill sergeant, something like that.
That would make sense, but no, it's not. It's
Okay.
not that.
Okay.
It's
What is it
actually
then?
it's something that's in the first Alien movie.
Oh, geez, you're
Yeah.
gonna test me here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it
It's
is
like the president of the what's the corporation?
Wayland Yutani.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you're
a
like the
great idea,
president.
but it's not. It is actually the game mother because the
Oh, that's the worst.
I know. Yes. Well, I mean, there's obviously a lot of motherhood metaphors going on in the Alien movies, but the AIs the AI that controls the ship in Alien is called Mother.
Yes.
So I think it's the idea that you're sort of the AI controller.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I will give them credit for that. That is just ridiculous enough.
Yeah, and you will lose experience points if you don't refer to me as the game mother at all times. Okay, so
Someone will call you the GM, and you're like, no, say the whole thing.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's one other thing I wanted to mention, and then I want to ask you about your recent Halloween game experience because
Yeah.
I know our listeners, like me, are eager to hear how that went. But so one of the things I'm wrangling with right now in the last couple days before this Alien game is how deep I want to dive into Roll20 because it's going to be an online game, and I feel like faced with a tool like Roll20, it's got a lot of stuff, got a lot of features, and
Yes.
I feel like I have to choose, do I just go bare bones and we basically use it like Skype with a whiteboard, or do I try to figure out all the advanced stuff, which looks very cool, but like I have these warning lights going off in my head that like every extra feature you do is going to like add a possible distraction
Yeah.
from just playing. And I'm wondering, what have you done when you've run online games? I mean, where do you fall in that? Do you try to really tease out like all the cool features, or are you just like, let's just play, don't worry about the buttons?
Yeah, I started. So the one campaign that I ran was that was the longest on Roll20 was the Blades in the Dark campaign that you played in.
Yep.
And I think so. We met for maybe 10 sessions. I don't even know.
Yeah.
At this point, it was more than 4. Right.
Yeah.
So there was enough time for us to get used to the character sheets that were integrated in Roll20. That was a fairly large learning curve, I think, but pretty useful once we got into it. I want to say at least one player just didn't bother with it at all. Like the online character sheet, they just kind of kept their own.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was pretty useful. Although those character sheets were maybe designed by John Harper, the guy that wrote it. If not him, someone pretty close to that, because they're very professionally done. They're pretty easy to use. And done well. So I think the big question I would have for you with that is like how much of that Alien game has been ported to Roll20. Yeah, I don't know if you know the answer to that, but like,
No, I do
that
know
would be
the
where
answer.
I would start. Okay.
Yeah, so the answer is there is nothing official has been ported.
Okay.
And this is for the first time in my life I found myself like thinking, I mean, I'm very late to this game, but late to this like issue, but it's like, holy cow, why is there not a set of like alien tokens, brand official tokens or pieces or character, there is a character sheet that, as far as I could tell, is designed by like a fan, and it's great. It's like, it's like professional quality character sheet that integrates with Roll20. But I have been spending a lot of time like making my own like little tokens with the pictures of the NPCs, and it's just like I would have paid for this because I don't. I mean, it's kind of fun to do it myself, but it's not that fun.
Yeah.
And I have kids.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, yeah, you should turn around and make those available to people then, whether for free download or not. I would caution you against doing much with Roll20. Just again, knowing the group that we're playing with, we will all get extremely distracted with clicking on buttons and stuff. So unless you're absolutely sure, like, we need to click on this button because this is going to save all of us a half an hour of debate, let's just use it like Skype and like a shared whiteboard. Because, like, yeah, I think there's a lot of depth to Roll20, but it's a whole system to learn. And in my experience, we're going to spend the first half an hour to an hour dealing with audio issues anyway.
Audio issues, and I realized today we're going to have like a quick Roll20, like how to use the interface conversation, because not everyone in this game will have used it before. And it did make me realize, like, I am not playing a game that has, much Roll20 support at all. But there are game companies that like produce and sell official like Roll20 compatible like packages. Like Evil Hat does this. So if you're playing Fate of Cthulhu, you can buy like the Fate of Cthulhu Roll20 kit, and it has all the stuff from the book like in digital form, saving you having to do it yourself. So I don't know. It's neat. It's like it can be a lot of work, and for like a uncertain, I'll say, payoff. So I think I'm going to err on the side of keeping it pretty simple.
Maybe like the second time you run it, like that's a good. But I mean, like, there's going to be enough questions just about like mechanics and stuff. I don't know. That's, at least in my experience, I found that it just ends up being a distraction more than anything. And maybe it's just I'm not an elite gamer or something. But it's.
I think we've talked about my Alien game long enough. But more importantly, last week we did some talking about the Halloween game you were planning to run, and you have since run that game, and I want to hear how it went. And in particular, if this will help you focus in, I would like to hear what you would go back and tell yourself like a month ago when you started dreaming up this game idea. Ooh. What would you tell yourself to do differently or to plan differently? So let's hear how it went.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so for those that didn't listen to the previous episode or just wondering, right? So I ran a game that was a recreation of a fake 90s sitcom, and the characters were playing then in a special Halloween episode that the sitcom was doing. So the sitcom was called Sounds Good to Me. It was all about the Good family, located just outside of Detroit, and the Halloween episode that they were playing was the Good family. It was going to a corn maze, so that was the setup for the one shot. So it was not intended to be like the Elder Gods come and destroy the universe. It was intended to be like a silly 90s sitcom family goes and has fun in a corn maze. So it went really well. So I ended up adapting the Lasers and Feelings rule set. So that's again by John Harper. So I ended up rewriting it to be more like a 90s sitcom. So it was, instead of lasers and feelings, it was wisdom and wisecracks instead. So whenever they encountered a situation where they had to roll, they had to decide whether they're going to use like the wisdom of like a parental figure from a 90s sitcom to get over this obstacle in the face of them, or like make up a joke or a wisecrack, or just kind of barrel into a situation like a class clown type character might. So that ended up being a pretty good setup for the mechanics of the game. I didn't have enough like NPCs for them to really interact with, which is, I think you were just saying, what would you go back and change? I think I would have more like other characters for them to interact with. The moments in the game that were a lot of fun were when they were either talking with each other or talking with NPCs, less so when they were trying to do some like action related stuff, just because the rules didn't super support that at all. But yeah, it was great. So I plan on having like a chunk of times just set aside for character creation, because that was sort of the meat of it. It was pretty fun, like come up with your character, like what kind of trope do you want to play?
That almost sounds like as fun or more fun than the game, honestly.
Like it's such a great setup. It ended up being like super good. So they chose their name, their archetype. So like, are you parental figure, that sort of stuff. Are
you the nerd, the jock, that sort of thing?
The nerd, the jock, that sort of stuff. Their family role, like, how do you kind of integrate in with the family a little bit? And then they had to have a flaw, so like something that it happens. So like, I think the examples I gave were like, you're always saying the wrong thing. Like one of the characters ended up choosing the flaw of like, he was a little kid, so Matt Wilson, who's also been a guest on this. Yes, he was playing a little like 8-year-old boy in the game, but he was just like, he always finds himself in the wrong place. So at one point he rolled incorrectly, and I just kind of teleported him somewhere else, because it was like, well, you don't know how you got there either.
That's great.
Yeah. And then probably most importantly, they all had to pick a catchphrase, which was super fun. So
okay.
they all had a catchphrase that they would get to say if they rolled particularly well.
Was that hard for them? Like, well, you can finish talking, but I want to hear how easy or hard this was for your players.
It was mostly pretty easy. There was like a little bit of collaborative, sorting out of some stuff, like just more along the lines of like sort of connections between characters that they wanted to have some of that. But for the most part, everybody was just like, yeah, I want to play this kind of character. And, everybody picked, for the most part, everybody picked someone different, but there was a little bit of discussion about who was going to do what. Yeah. So that ended up being just like great. People had catchphrases they came up with pretty easily. And then throughout the session, we ended up kind of like learning more about the characters, and they fit them together a bit more too. So it was super good. I'm looking forward to playing this again. So I have another session of this that's going to happen probably this week or so with some of my wife's friends who really want to play it. So I'm looking forward to character creation in that as well. The game itself, the game proper, was pretty good. It was fine. It ended up being, we were playing outside. It was getting kind of cold. I think everybody was like, I was pretty tired by the end of that day. It was on a Friday.
Yeah.
And all that. Yeah. So it went pretty fast, but it also felt pretty satisfying. So I think we spent like half hour or so on character creation. And then the actual episode that we played through was maybe an hour and a half, if that. Yeah. So it was like pretty tight, pretty fun. Everybody got some fun, like one-liners and fun actions and stuff in, and then we just sat around the fire for a little bit afterwards and talked. It was fantastic. It was really nice to see people in person. This is the first time that I'd gotten a group together in a while like that.
Sure.
Too.
What are you going to be doing differently the next time you run? And now you have a different group of players. You have a bunch of role-playing newbies that you're going to be running for it. The group you just ran for was mostly veterans of role-playing games. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly like long-term veterans. Yeah, so like John Corey was there. Matt Wilson, his wife, they've been playing forever. Some other folks who haven't been on the podcast, so I won't name their names directly. But so everybody like knew what they were doing. This other group that I'm going to run for is like, they just think it sounds like fun, right? Like, if I told them that we were playing D&D, they'd be like, no, we're not. Like, I don't want to play D&D, but they want to play this thing. So that should be pretty fun. I love playing with newbies because they don't like know what they're not allowed to do, right? Like, how like if you've been playing games, you kind of like know a little bit what you're not allowed to do in a game, or like what's going to break it. So I think for them, I'm going to just have more people for them to interact with, because that, again, like that seemed to be a little bit more fun. And then I need to work on having a bit of a tighter ending to it, like a bit of a tighter like wrap up. So without getting into the story too much, it just sort of petered out at the end of the other session. Like it was fine and it worked, but it was also just, it wasn't as strong as the first part of it.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, I think like it, all in all, I'm really glad that I did it. It was a little bit of a challenge just because, I have a baby at home and stuff like that. It's easier to not run games than it is to run games, but it's also a lot more satisfying to put yourself out there and do all the preparation and get it all together. So.
You're talking about running for newbies. It reminds me of an exchange I had with a newbie player, like probably close to 20 years ago, that has stuck with me. And we were playing D&D or something like D&D at the time, and they were brand new, had never done it before. They were there, I think, mostly because their spouse was playing, and they were playing a wizard of some sort, level 1 wizard. This was basic D&D stuff, and she was like, okay, well, I want to be able to like turn invisible and fly, and and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't like do that for another couple of months at least worth of regular playing. Like right now, you can give yourself maybe a slight. I mean, the most powerful spell in your arsenal will give you like a slight bonus to like sneaking around maybe or something. Like, and that was one of those like pivotal moments where I was like, it would be so much more fun. Like everyone here wishes that the wizard could just turn invisible and fly. Like, that would be 100 times more fun than what I just did, which was say, no, you're like, you're actually very weak and powerless. So that was one of those like, like maybe there's a different angle to this whole like role-playing hobby, one that like celebrated and empowered players a little bit more. Not that there's anything wrong with first level D&D, but that was just like a little aside I had with this newbie player who I then have not really interacted with in any way for like 20 years, but I still think about it from time to time.
And they probably think about it from time to time as like D&D is so lame.
That's right. The time I tried to have fun with D&D and then I was told to shut up and sit down.
You can cast like thaumaturgy or whatever.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I think something that was really fun about running this one shot, right, is so it was very much grounded in a non-magical setting. Like there was no like magic to it at all. Like so they're playing like normal-ish people, right? So that was actually a lot of fun to play with because it's like they didn't have spells at their ready to do stuff. There was no way they're going to fight their way out of anything, right? So it's just kind of like interacting, and it ends up it's pretty fun to just do role playing, right? Like just give people sort of an excuse to do it, and it ends up being a good time. Okay,
well, I think that it's probably time for us to wrap up. We've built a new D6 table, which we can put in the show notes. If somebody actually uses this, that would really crack me up. So if you if you ever do, please let me know. And then we did a little recap about both of the games that we are kind of involved with at the moment. So I think this is a good time to stop.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody who's listening. We super appreciate it. Always reach out and you can send us a message if you want. We're always happy to chat gaming, or I guess take criticism. Although, we can take it, I guess.
Chris can take it. Yeah. Send it Chris and to Chris. Yeah. And
you can send it to me. I will filter it for Andy. Yeah.
Thanks also for kind of playing along with us, dear listeners, as we have tried a few different things as far as format goes on the podcast. It's not something we've been planning out meticulously, but we're in a weird place, how many months into this pandemic, and we got a lot going on in our personal lives. So it's been just, we've been trying a few different things, and we would actually love to hear, like, if you're digging this more than you dug earlier episodes, or the other way around. So that helps us to hear from you. So please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
Remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM or game mother.